better machines or any goods that might be needed for the productive sector in order to make a better export, to buy better, not indiscriminately, because if not, it will be promoting the import of flowers when you're also exporting flowers.
Very, very...
Just one supplement.
Interesting proposition. Before I come to you, let me just have this young lady in the front comment. She hasn't had a chance. In the front right here.
Thank you. Meg Jones, Women in Trade Advisor, ITC. The question was about new strategies, your point, Lisa, and the question that I have to the panelists is as to whether or not, as trade support institutions, you're collecting gender disaggregated data, sex disaggregated data, on who's actually benefiting from your services by volume and by value. And the reason I want to raise this question is because of a changing dynamic in export-oriented value chains. If we consider China as an example, my own country, Australia, Uganda, US headquartered multinational corporations, many of whom are now have operations in China, bring with them policies from headquarters such as inclusive procurement policies to source from women-owned enterprises. If we consider the Fortune 500 companies only, 97% of Fortune 500 companies have an inclusive policy for procurement where they are seeking to source from women-owned enterprises. And my question to the panelists is, do you currently know what your degree of service offerings to women business owners is? Because they are very much going to need your services in order to be able to service the demand and the increasing demand from multinational corporations operating in your geographies. Thank you.
Quickly, go ahead.
In this aspect, I would like to appreciate China, and everybody have to learn from China in maintaining surplus in terms of revenue rather than in terms of capital flows.
Actual growth.
We have to learn how to maintain by savings, by earnings rather than on capital inflows.
Right. So also in addressing the question, and I'm going to ask my panelists to be as succinct as possible. We only have a couple of minutes. So in two sentences, if possible, to address a couple of things. How you see a TSI moving forward in the context of recognition of gender issues, in recognition of e-commerce, and of course in the services that you will provide, whether it will be policy or it will be focused more on service-driven. Just to give me a comment on how you see TSIs moving forward. I'm going to start with Florence and then go to Mr. Wang. Very briefly.
Yeah, on gender and trade, I should say that in Uganda we launched in 2008. We launched our national export strategy, the gender dimension, and that is the roadmap that we are using to make sure that we put in a stronger limelight women in trade. And the reason we did that is because we realized that in implementing and drafting our national export strategy, which was general, the gender issues that we are bringing about were being marginalized and all the time being subsumed in other strategies, as if after all the women will also be there. So now by having a specific gender dimensioned national export strategy, which is just in its first year of implementation, we should be able to get those statistics, those particular trends, those unique gaps that face women and issues that cause them to be marginalized in terms of being integrated in the export chain brought to the forefront. So for the moment, I do not yet have them yet consolidated, but I do have a gender dimension of an export strategy that I'm looking for supporters, those who are extremely gender passionate about seeing gender in trade, join me in implementing it and seeing the results.
Quickly
on e-commerce, I should say that probably some of us are still challenged by the availability and the quality of e-commerce driving infrastructure. Much as we appreciate it as an important tool that we should be bringing to the surface and using and encouraging SMEs to be a lot more e-commerce centric in their business, it is still an extremely challenging area, especially because of the infrastructure, but we are doing as much as we can by having programs that are training SMEs in the basic understanding of dimensions of e-trade. We haven't moved that high, but we are looking forward because we are getting a sea cable being laid to reach our country, and therefore we should be in a better state to come out more aggressively to promote e-commerce in trade.
Thanks, Florence. Mr. Lee, maybe speak to what Chongqing is going to be doing going forward.
I'd like to make my comments on the role of women in trading activities. And I think the participation of women in trading development is vitally important in case of Chongqing. In my unit, we got 7 leaders, and 3 of them are women. And in CCPIT, Sub-Council of Chongqing, and 2 of the leaders are women. And also we have the president of the foreign trade company, and also the women. So they play a very active role in Chongqing. So I think they can.
Any e-commerce initiatives going forward, any change in your services, e-commerce?
About e-commerce. E-commerce as a priority in our strategy. In post-crisis era, we have invested 6 million RMB in building a platform for e-commerce. And we got 836 companies taking part in the platform. And 524 companies, we help them to send messages. And the click now has reached about 550,000. I think this is very useful. And also we have already had the transaction value of about 400 million. And also we work together with the UN Industrial Development Organization. We have a platform for the trading of automobiles. So through the technology transfer, SPS Center has been built to help the local car parts companies to find partners, especially multinationals. The third point I want to share with you is about import promotion, because just now many people mentioned import promotion. We got 3 things to do. The first one, we have already adjusted in our policy, because in the past we just gave guarantee for exporters, but now we also provide guarantee and support for importers and financing services. This is the first one, the first method. The second, in the past, because we just focused too much, we give just a green passage for exporters, but now we also give you some favorable policies for the importers. For example, you can just pass the customs very freely and smoothly. And also will provide leased. That means the technologies, the equipment we need now in China. So if you can provide this kind of technologies and equipment and badly led by China, we can give you some preferential policies and treatments.
Thank you very much. It will be very interesting, because it really brings forward the point about TSIs expanding their scope to look at different areas, import, and other things. Brian, quickly, did your experience speak to a new direction for TSIs going forward? What do you see?
Well, certainly what I've heard today echoes what I was hearing from the head of the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, and that is the need for TSIs to adopt an integrative trade model. And they use 4 components. 2-way trade. You're looking not only at exports, but how you can import more competitively, so your exports are more competitive, as Ricardo was mentioning. 2-way investment, and certainly the examples we've heard from China have demonstrated how outward investment is actually a tool for exports, which is not always intuitive, but in fact it adds value through managerial and brand development in the domestic economy. The third component is supply and value chain integration. We hear a lot about that, and Mr. Lamy mentioned that as well as a key role of TSIs, helping companies find their